In 1991, the small logging town of Stevenson, Washington, was rocked by a chilling crime. 15-year-old Amy Dexter was murdered and buried in a shallow grave. The loss and confusion only grew deeper when it was found to be someone in their own community that was responsible. 23 years later, Amy's tragic death and legacy is still ever present. Jackie Garrity has the story.
Her eyes gaze out of the yearbook photo as if she's smiling right at you. Her long blonde hair lays gracefully down her back, and her brown eyes have a doe-like quality to them. She is dressed in a polka dot mid-drift top, popular for the time. Amy Dexter was 15 years old when this picture was taken, on the day she died. Amy Christine Dexter was born February 25, 1975 in Hood River, Oregon, to her mother Dawn Dexter and father Keith Davis.
She's born and she's all fingers and toes, and I thought she was going to have the biggest feet in the world, which she did.
Amy's parents split when her mother was pregnant with her. She was raised by her mother in a small logging town in Stevenson, Washington, which sits about 45 minutes outside of Portland, Oregon. In 1975, Stevenson was a booming logging town. About 400 logs a day were cut from the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. Amy enjoyed a happy childhood, being raised alongside her older sister, Tina.
Just remember doing a lot of things with our grandparents together. We were always spending the night with them, going huckleberry picking, fishing, just playing outside in the creek.
Amy was a tomboy who was known for having a mischievous side.
Well, we had this great idea that we could get poison oak and not go to school, so we intentionally rubbed poison oak all over ourselves. And she was swollen like crazy, like her whole a balloon with poison oak. And I never got it, so she got to stay home, but I had to go to school. So that backfired.
There's one time Tina went out dancing with her friend Autumn, and we were waiting for her to get home, but we padded up some pants and a boots and laid them under the steps where you have to go up on the deck. And they finally got home, and they got out of the car and started walking. Tina screamed. They ran back in the car. We're going to go get the police. And Amy was just watching on the couch, laughing her head.
Dawn was a stay-at-home mom and had limited means, but she worked very hard to provide a happy home for her two girls.
We made sure we had so much stuff under the tree for us, and even though it was probably hard for her to do that, but she always did. She did her best.
In 1991, Guns N' Roses were on the radio, Desert Storm was happening, and Stevenson's once prosperous timber industry had dried up and left the area in an economic depression. For kids growing up in Stevenson, there weren't many options for entertainment. Most teens retreated to the outdoors to take their vehicles up in the woods to go mudding. Amy was right at home in this crowd. Rainey Ferguson and Lorraine Huber were two of Amy's closest friends.
The boys with the trucks, with the big tires in the mud, and I mean, that was just kind of her crowd.
We would sneak out a lot. We'd try to find parties, because back in those days they were everywhere and abundant, so we would do that a lot.
In this group was an 18-year-old local sawmill worker named Chris Bradley. Described as quiet and withdrawn to those around him, he had already graduated but still lived in Stevenson with his father. Tall and slender with dark eyes and hair, he had a disheveled, unkempt appearance.
I only knew Chris Bradley as one of the boys my dad said, well, he didn't specifically mention him. He was the type of boy that my dad would not let me near.
Around 9:30 p.m. on January 26th, Chris Bradley showed up at Amy's house to hang out with her. He first asked if she would accompany him the 1.5 miles down the road to return his father's Bronco to his house. They said they would be right back. 3 hours later, her mother called the sheriff's office when she still hadn't returned home. A massive search ensued as deputies combed the woods where she was last seen. Soon, her pretty face was all over the news.
Looking for her in the woods just north of Stevenson, Washington. Don Reese is at the search command post and joins us now live. Don, any sign of the girl?
Pete, there has been no sign all day long, but just a few minutes ago, the disappearance of 15-year-old Amy Dexter.
It scares a lot of us. We've all been talking about it.
We're a small school, kind of a family, and we're all visible,
the
upset
sheriff
about it.
says whatever may have happened to Amy Dexter before her disappearance, it's almost certain she did not get lost.
My worst thought was that she was hungry. And that somebody had kidnapped her, and that hopefully they weren't, mistreating her or something. And that was the hard part, was that not knowing where she was.
5 days later, Amy's body was discovered buried in a shallow grave in a densely wooded area above Stevenson. She had a deep wound in her neck and had been sexually assaulted. She was less than a mile from her home. Undersheriff Dave Cox of the Skamania County Sheriff's Office was present during the initial search and investigation.
No, I felt like there was foul play from the beginning. Well, Chris's initial story, it wasn't matching up with when we found Amy, because when we found Amy, it was obvious that she'd been sexually assaulted, that this wasn't something where, she just walked off and died. It was definitely a homicide case.
That same day, Chris Bradley was brought in one final time after a series of interviews to speak with detectives. After 3 hours of going over inconsistencies in his story, he confessed. Retired Sheriff Dennis Warren conducted the interview.
Just a normal conversation like here, sitting here talking like this. Even up to the point where he admitted to it. No, there was no duress in him at all. Just another day to him.
The tiny town was shocked by this cold and chilling crime. Still reeling from the pain and confusion, many students at Stevenson High School didn't quite know how to feel.
I don't think people knew how to react because a lot of kids were friends with him. A lot of kids thought he wouldn't be capable of such a thing. And so, on top of the fact that we've all lost Amy, now one of our schoolmates is the one that killed her, and we're all just like, what? So I don't think it helped anything at all. I don't think anybody felt relieved.
Chris Bradley later recanted his confession and still claims he is innocent to this day. He was found guilty of rape and aggravated murder, a sentence that awarded him life in prison without the possibility of parole.
He wouldn't have given the confession that he did, knowing all of the things that he said in that confession about her and what we found at the scene. It matched up too well.
23 years have now gone by, and Amy's mother and sister still live in Stevenson. Tina is a devoted mother raising 3 athletic boys. One is headed to college next year on a baseball scholarship.
She would have been the cool aunt. She would have been taking them out to learn how to drive.
Amy's mother, Dawn, has opened her home to countless foster children over the years. She has given many a safe and loving home they might not otherwise have received.
Yeah, I've had over 200, probably closer to 300 foster kids, so I keep busy with kids.
A person as vivacious as Amy left many legacies behind. How is she remembered to this day?
It's just nice that nobody has forgotten her. Still to this day, it's nice that she still lives on.
Amy was friends with everybody in every crowd, so Amy was always a friend. Didn't matter what circle she was running with or you were running with, she was always, she was always just Amy.
Although her mother and sister have gone on to live their lives, Amy's tragic death is never far from their hearts and minds.
I don't know, it's weird. There's just times where, out of the blue, I just will start crying, missing her, as far as, wishing that she was here for the kids. Or
It's a couple of years, if I laughed, I would stop, I'd feel guilty. Because I always had this deal with God. I said, if somebody has to die, let it be me, not one of my girls. That was just something I always talked out with him, but it didn't work out that way.
Several months after Amy's death, members of the community got together and dedicated a park in Stevenson in Amy's honor. From the park, you can sit and watch the Columbia River peacefully flow by and the Cascade Mountains stand majestically in the distance. One can sit and enjoy simply being outside in nature, just as Amy always did.